Hi, Alan Cox here. Let's say you have a retention policy across the board OneDrive, Teams, SharePoint, even email. And let's say you have that retention policy set to 7 years, and after the 7 years, delete or maybe do nothing. It really doesn't matter. But let's say you have a particular sensitive type or an item type that you want to remove in a very short period of time. Maybe let's just say meeting notes or AI generated notes or facilitator notes inside of a Teams meeting. And legal says we don't want those hanging around forever. We want those gone in 30 days or 60 days or whatever the case. And they may be thinking we could do a retention label. The problem is retention labels actually override by lengthening a particular sensitive type. So, for example, you have, let's say, a 7 year policy across the board, and let's say there's a particular sensitive type that you want to extend to 10 years, then you would apply a label to that type, which will extend. Retention beats retention. Microsoft introduced a way that we can actually shorten the life of an item that has a retention and even a litigation hold, and that is called priority cleanup. And so we're going to take a look at that today. That's going to be our focus today. And there are some nuances and there's some setup to it. It's not overly difficult, but we're going to take a look at it. It is still in preview, but that's going to be our focus today is priority cleanup inside of Microsoft Purview. Let's get started. All right, so here we are inside of Microsoft Purview. Again, purview.microsoft.com. And we're going to go here to Solutions. And then we're going to go from Solutions to Data Lifecycle Management. Because Priority Cleanup is part of that data lifecycle management. It's part of, it's not really part of retention policies, but it's would certainly be associated with them. And so here we are. We are in Priority Cleanup, and we're in preview mode now. Full stop here. We won't be able to demo this end to end because something I did not say in the intro, but I'll say it now. This is anything but priority. It usually takes right at about a week for this to really get going. And honestly, I've not really set the clock on this for a little while. They could have shortened it up a little bit, but it does take a bit of time. I wouldn't call it priority cleanup by any means. Now, once it gets going, then it will stay kind of on track. We'll look at the policy and all of that. But point is that we've got so I do have a retention policy, and my retention policy is relatively pretty straightforward. We'll just take a look at see what I have here. So I've got a couple adaptive scope here. I have a OneDrive retention 6 years, no delete, and that's all OneDrive. So I have a 1 year or 6 year retention on OneDrive. By the way, remember when I always talk about policies and so forth, I should be able to look at this policy, know exactly who it applies to, what it does, and what the outcome is going to be. So I know this is OneDrive. It's a retention policy. It's for 6 years. No delete after 6 years. So we're going to guarantee we have items that's for 6 years, and it's going to apply to all OneDrives in this case. So that's my policy. Now, let's suppose, as I said from the intro, let's suppose I want to take a particular item in OneDrive, like, for example, sensitive items. Maybe it could be a custom sensitive item as well. So maybe things with account numbers or contracts, if you've made things records and so forth. Then I can say, oh, well, we want to make sure those are kept for 10 years. Then I would do a label policy, a retention label policy. But we're not, in this case, we're doing a priority cleanup. So priority cleanup, we'll pop out here to this little knowledge base article because we can jump right here. Bypass retention holds to delete content from OneDrive and SharePoint, including Copilot related content such as Teams recordings and transcripts. Very common scenario. In fact, in this article, it will talk a lot about that. And we can learn more about priority cleanup for Exchange. So here we're going to cover a few things here. So use priority cleanup. Use the priority cleanup feature in data lifecycle management in Purview when you need to override existing retention settings, or eDiscovery holds to delete content from OneDrive, SharePoint. Despite the existing holds, items are moved to the despite a hold, items are moved to the second stage recycle bin, and from there go through the same process and time periods, and we can look at all of that. But although priority cleanup might be needed for security or privacy in response to an incident and for compliance and regulatory, typical use cases in SharePoint OneDrive include the following: delete stale team meeting recording, transcript, and the items that may be turned on for Copilot recap, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so on down it goes, and so yeah, so you can't use, here's some exceptions, okay? You cannot use priority cleanup for items that are marked as a record or regulatory record. So I actually referenced record a minute ago. That's I misspoke on that a little bit. If an item is actually a record and you've classified it as a record, say a file plan that's a record type of, contract, things like that, then it will not do that. But if you have a sensitive type of, we want to make sure that anything with, customs type of customer account number or social security number, credit card, whatever it is, then you can apply that to that. But it will not delete anything of a record. And although priority cleanup can override eDiscovery holds, the data might already be copied to the eDiscovery review set where it can't be deleted by priority cleanup. So we talked about eDiscovery a while back. We did some video series on that. And if you do a review set, then the it cannot be deleted by priority cleanup. Let's see. So here's some of the priority cleanup for different workloads and kind of how it behaves. So typical use case for Exchange: prevents data spillage, deletes sensitive data for compliance regulations, delete stale teams, meetings, and recordings. Very common, as I said. These are the common use cases. Delete retained files that are in preservation hold library or litigation hold through eDiscovery. Typical use case, kind of rare. I honestly don't see it applied too much in the Exchange, but definitely do on the SharePoint side. And really, this is, and the OneDrive side, and this is the typical use case for that. So typical policy uses for Teams meeting recording transcripts, as a continual thing, and for preservation of whole library after a user leaves the organization. So if you want to clean that up later. So two-person rule. So this is interesting. This is what we're going to get into. Another priority cleanup admin is assigned in the policy to review items after the policy is turned on. Okay, so this is not one person can go rogue and do this. You have to have 2, sometimes 3 people for these policies. We're going to look at this. But certainly 2. Another person, same thing. Another priority cleanup admin is included in the policy configuration flow before the policy is turned on. We'll take a look at that. And then we have the assigned approvers. So we have priority cleanup admin, eDiscovery admin, retention manager, and eDiscovery admin. We're going to look at these. Simulations required? Yes, on SharePoint OneDrive. Recommended on the Exchange side. Override preservation lock. So if you have a retention preservation lock, yes, it will. Only if the policy is configured for delete only. Okay. We haven't talked too much about preservation lock, but we can talk about that at some point. But basically, it means that nobody can basically override the retention policy once it's set. And then it gets into some some prerequisites and permissions, policy approvers. Here are the role assignments, and these are roles that we create. We'll take a look because there are some custom roles, and I was going to look and see if it tells us about the to successfully access and manage priority cleanup in the admin portal. You must have priority cleanup admin role for SharePoint OneDrive. This role is required to create and manage priority cleanup policies enabled or to disable the feature in this viewer. Okay. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to take a look. But the first thing I want to do is I want to look at these. I want to look at these roles here. So let's go out to purview.microsoft.com, but I'm going to go over to we're going to go to solutions, all solutions, and we're going to go to settings. We're going to go to roles here, roles and scopes. We're going to go to role groups because I wanted to look at this now. Microsoft says that if you want, the right role group, you basically can go to organizational management. You go to org management, and we'll see that we have priority cleanup admin, okay, is in that role group. However, that's an awful lot of roles just to give somebody for this particular job. So I generally do a custom built role. So I'm going to sort this. We're going to look at this real quick. I'm going to sort this, and we're going to go down here to priority cleanup. And we'll see that I have priority admin, eDiscovery admins, and you will see that there are priority cleanup retention managers, and I have priority cleanup admins. Not sure. I may have created a couple different ones here. So roles in this is retention, priority cleanup admin, and let's just want to compare here, priority cleanup admins. Okay. All right. We're going to take a look at these. So notice these are all custom. There is not a priority cleanup admin built in. Okay, these are all custom. All right, so what I've done here is using this article, we've gone in and we have created a priority cleanup administrator and an eDiscovery admin. So, and then the Exchange, remember, had a retention one. So if we look, we'll see that we have on the wrong one here. On the retention one here, let's see if I've got retention managers here. So but we're focused on a couple roles, and we're going to look at these roles, and this is for what SharePoint requires, which is right here, 2-person role. Okay, and it is, but it does need eDiscovery admin. But also, you generally need 2 people in this admin role because the last person that can edit the policy cannot turn the policy on. So some of this we won't be able to get all the way to completion because it has to run a pretty lengthy simulation, but then we could turn the policy on, and then we'll just kind of tell you how it goes from there. And then it does take some time. So we're going to take a look at this. So the first thing we'll do is I'm going to show you that I have a custom role for, let's start with priority cleanup admins. Okay. So all I did is I went and I created a new role group. That's it. I just created a new role group. And if I create a new role group, let's just call this priority cleanup admin. Okay, let's just do that. And then we're going to choose roles for this. And then we're going to search for, okay, here are the required roles. Priority cleanup admin. Okay. Then we're going to add another role. And so then we're going to add data classification. Okay. Data classification content viewer and list viewer, and then retention manager. So those are the roles. Now, I'm not going to go through and build all of this because I've already done that with I believe this role right here. We can see we have disposition management, classification viewer, priority cleanup admin, classification content viewer. Okay, so we have these roles here already. The other role that we need is priority cleanup eDiscovery admins. And again, I created a custom role for this, custom role group, and then I added the appropriate roles in that role group, and they are search and purge, hold, review, data classification, content viewer, etc. All of these have to be in that role group, and then assign this out to Mia. So the three people I have myself, so me, Alan Cox here, and I am assigned this purview, or rather this priority cleanup admin custom role, and as well as Liam. Okay, two admins. Okay, because if I edit this policy, the last one to edit the policy cannot return it back on or turn it back on, and it has to go through a pretty lengthy simulation cycle anyway. So it's pretty interesting. So it does have some checks and balances there. Then finally, Mia is my eDiscovery admin. Now, the only time this is required is if an item is on a eDiscovery hold, it will not automatically delete it. It will require that person to approve that hold. And you cannot, here's some limitations. You cannot customize the email notifications. Approvers can't nominate additional approvers, and there's no automatic approval after a specific time. And if an approver doesn't agree to delete the specific item, they must assign a retention label to it. And although you can delete a priority cleanup policy if the approval process for it is complete, items might still be deleted. So we're just going to dive right in, and we're going to take a look. So that's kind of how we set up kind of the folks that are going to be part of the approval process, part of the policy creation. So I am logged in as myself, and I'm going to just go into lifecycle management inside Purview, priority cleanup. We're going to create a new policy. So the first policy I'm going to create is I want recordings inside of Teams, a Teams meeting recording to be deleted after whatever, let's call it 30 days. Okay. Now, this could be because we want to make sure that that artifact is removed. If it's a Teams recording, we don't want it hanging around. We don't want all of that, right? So, and where do these live? They live in the recordings folder inside of that person's OneDrive. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a policy that basically says Teams meeting recording, delete, and we'll say after 30 days. Okay, and we can add a meaningful description right here, but I'm going to go ahead and go here. We could do an adaptive here, and so an adaptive is if the policy will apply to somebody that falls into this group, whatever we've set for an adaptive scope. I've done some videos on adaptive scope. You can check those out. I'm just going to do static now. I'm just going to say pretty much across the board. We are going to do this policy for OneDrive, all accounts. I can add some exclusions here if I want to, but I'm not. We're going to go next here. Now, this is where we get into the KQL editor, right? Custo Query Language Editor. And so, or now they're called Keyword Query Language. But in any case, there's plenty of documentation on this. In fact, I think it's maybe right in here. I use a little different syntax for it. Let me see if I can find it in here. Yeah, so for example, if we want to find Teams recording and transcripts, we can do this right here. All I have to do is put that in there. I often use this parent link, parent link tells me what folder to go after. And so I'm going to use a little bit different variation. You can use that if you want to. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this one right here, which is I'm going after the recordings folder and program ID, basically it's a meeting recording. Now, if I wanted to just smoke everything in that folder, I wouldn't have to put any of this right here. I could just do parent link recordings. I'm being very as specific as I can. And so then we're going to go next here. Okay. Now delete items as soon as possible. Now notice this items matching let me see. Items protected by eDiscovery hold will require a disposition review. And that disposition review would be by Mia because Mia is our eDiscovery, Priority Cleanup eDiscovery admin, remember? So I'm going to say, yeah, we're going to do custom here. And I'm going to say, we're going to go blank this out. And we're going to go 30 days, right? That's what we wanted. 30 days from when items were created. And that is fine. We're going to go next here. Now it's going to say eDiscovery admins. Who is our eDiscovery admin? Because if an item is on eDiscovery hold, it needs to have an admin. So I'm going to say Mia is our eDiscovery admin. And if Mia did not have the right permissions, you would immediately get an error when we go to turn this on. We'll see. So we have to, for SharePoint and OneDrive, we have to run a priority cleanup mode, okay? And then the simulation results will expire within a week. And it takes, I'm not going to kid you, it has taken about a week for this to actually remove items initially. Of course, we're doing a 30-day cleanup, so it's totally fine. But if I went back here and said I want them to delete it within 24 hours or immediately or as soon as possible, it's still going to take that first run about a week to get it going. We can leave the policy turned off, but I'm going to go ahead and run this. And when we do, I understand we have to check this box here. Now, we're going to run this and see. All right, so the name cannot be longer than 64 characters or contain any, so I cannot actually include that in the name. Okay, so it's a little bit different for this. Let's go back here and change my name. Let's just say we're going to just delete 30 days, so I cannot use the greater than sign there. Interesting, okay. So we'll just go on down here and see if we do not get an error. Check this box again that I understand, and here we go. All right, and here's where we would normally pretty quickly, just like that error that came up, you would get an error saying that Mia does not have the right role permissions. It's checking all of that, and it does take a second here for it to go. And then it's going to go into simulation mode. And again, that can just take some time. While that's doing that, I'm going to pop, okay, so we're good. Okay, there's cleanup ID. I'm going to go next. By the way, you can do some PowerShell if you want to check on some of this. Won't get into that right now, but of course, we can audit log events related to that. So that's why that ID, you can pop that into audit logging and kind of check on some things. So we're going to see this policy showing up. We're going to see that it is in simulation. Also, we'll start getting email that there is a simulation running. It'll actually show like kind of an eDiscovery log. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pop over to Liam. So Liam is here, and we shall go to what we're going to do, solutions, and we're going to go to lifecycle management as well. Priority cleanup. We'll see priority cleanup here. Now, I created the policy. I cannot, when this simulation is done, it'll be ready to turn this policy on. If I were to check this box, actually, let me go in here and see. And by the way, it'll show some items that are getting hit, some items that, but if items are for review, like an eDiscovery hold, then Mia would see those because Mia is an eDiscovery admin. I'm priority cleanup eDiscovery admin. I can view eDiscovery simulation details. And if I do that, let's see if we see anything. We won't see anything right now, but let's see. Notice this says turn on policy. This will not happen until I get, and it's going to show me sample items, all of this, but it's not going to turn on this policy. In fact, because Alan, me, was the last one to edit this policy, it will never allow me to turn on this policy. Another priority cleanup admin has to do it. And that's where Liam could come in. So here's the one we just did. Liam would go here, because Alan would say, hey, that's running the simulation. Of course, Liam would know this. Say, could you go and turn this on? He would then go into the view simulation details, and this turn this policy on would be done and lit up once there is items review. So it's 0 of 1 scanned right now. So when it's done, it'll say 1 of 1. It'll give me how many matching items, all of this information there, right? In anybody's OneDrive for that. So that's what we are looking at. Now, let's suppose that then Liam goes in and says, oh, you know what? I need to edit up this policy real quick. I'm going to go in and I'm going to go in and I want to edit this policy. So Liam goes in and edits this policy. And once Liam edits the policy and then finishes, it's going to go back into simulation mode. Liam can now no longer turn that policy on. Now, Alan would only be the one that could go in and turn on that policy. So whoever edited last cannot turn the policy on once simulation is done. Okay. Now, if an item is under a eDiscovery hold, then neither of these two, and depending on the role assignments they have, and in fact, I don't think you can add all of the role assignments to 1 or 2 people, because I think it definitely does take multiple people to do it. But Mia would then have the ability to go in and do let's go in and pop and see what Mia's view is here, data lifecycle management, real quick, and we'll wrap this up. We'll create one more policy real quick, but we'll just the other one and show you what facilitator notes might look like. So let's go to priority cleanup. So priority cleanup under Mia. Now, Mia does not have priority cleanup admin, only the eDiscovery role, admin role inside of priority cleanup, which means that if something's on a hold, only Mia can go in and get that approved, approve that cleanup here. So we'll wait for this to finish loading. All right, there we go. So it has loaded up now, and we can see here's the policy we had. Now we can see some older policies that I had for some other demos that I've done. And there's just not anything here. And the reason really is because I don't have anything here that qualifies as a eDiscovery. There was nothing on hold, so that's why Mia is not seeing anything here. And quite frankly, there was not really anything in these folders anyway. But this would give Mia an opportunity to then go in and approve a final deletion for an item that was on an eDiscovery hold for this policy. We can see that we didn't have any qualifying events for that, but that's just kind of how that is set up. Now, we'll just go back to my persona here. And here's that policy. Now, if we go in here, and I'm going to refresh here, we'll see that this has probably completed a scan. But now this is a small environment. However, I didn't have anything that really qualified. I probably could have set that up just a little bit better. But either way, I think you get the idea. And when I click on this, and now I go into view simulation details, it's going to show me that it's complete, and it scanned all areas. Here we can see that it's complete. Okay, no matching items found. Just because there's not anything there, if we were to go into a OneDrive folder under recordings, and I only have 5 accounts in this particular environment, we see we'd have no items matching here. Otherwise, it would show me in details items that were matching, and it does work very, very well. It just does a lot of times take some time, and even if you set something to delete, even though it'll find it, it could take a long time before it actually goes away. Upwards of a week the first time I've seen that. So just be aware of that. Now let's create one more policy real quick. and then we'll get out of here. So let's do priority cleanup here, and we're going to go in and just create another policy. So I'm going to go in and create another policy, and this one is going to be go. This one's going to be for facilitator agent. So remember, when you turn on facilitator agent, it creates meeting notes inside of that organizer meeting folder with a loop extension. And so because it is using Microsoft Loop, and so I'm going to say facilitator notes, and we're going to say 30 days. Again, give it a meaningful description. We're going to move on and go next here. And again, adaptive scope or static. I'm going to go static here. This is going to be SharePoint, OneDrive. Not going to exclude anybody. I'm just going to go ahead and go on. And then here's where we do our key QL, our keyword query language, QSTO query language, whatever you want to call it. And here I'm going to say I want to do, remember, parent folder is going to be meetings inside of OneDrive. I could leave it at that, but if I had something important in that folder, it would delete that as well. I don't want it to delete everything in meetings folder. There might be something of value there. But if the file extension is a loop, which the SharePoint, or rather the facilitator agent does create a loop file, so I'm giving it two qualifying, that and this, then delete. And so we're going to give it, what do we want to do? We're going to say, yep, let's just do the same thing here. We're going to go 30 days. Again, so we're going to go 30 days from when it was created. We're going to go next. And then who is our eDiscovery admin? That's still going to be Mia. And so we're going to go next there and next. And then, again, we have to run it in simulation mode. It's a requirement. And so we're going to run this in simulation mode, and I understand, and we're going to check this off. And again, it's going to go build that policy. And if any of my permissions were wrong, if Mia doesn't have the right permissions, if an admin doesn't have the right permissions, whatever the case, it's going to give me an error here. And so, so we'll let this build out, and then it will go off into simulation mode. Still submitting that policy, and there we go. Here is our cleanup ID. If we want to do, and we want to go in and do an audit search on that, we can. And so as we click here, we'll see that this is now in simulation mode. And by the way, you're going to see this facilitator notes is still in, rather, this Teams one here is still in simulation mode. I was the last one to edit that. I'm going to go, I'm curious. I want to go into that policy with Liam, which is my other priority cleanup admin. I'm going to refresh here, and I'm going to see if Liam has the ability to turn this on. I doubt it because it is still in simulation mode, but we're going to open this up here, and I'm just curious, since it has finished, technically given us some results, which we didn't have any results, but it is completed for all intents and purposes. But it is still technically in simulation mode, and it does stay there usually for a while. So we're going to go, we do have the ability to turn on this policy. So Liam has the ability to turn on the policy because it's technically finished scanning. Still showing in simulation mode, that's fine, but we do have the ability to turn that policy on. So what I've seen here is that things are speeding up a little bit. They've improved that a little bit. That is nice. But I want to show you something real quick because I told you about it, but I want to show you since I can turn it on. Now I want to edit this policy. If I go in and I edit this policy as Liam, and I'm going to go in and, you know what, I'm going to create an exception here. And I'm going to say we want to create an exception of Mia. Oh, I have to actually do the OneDrive account. So it's a little, I'm not going to do that right now. That's right. You have to actually give it the URL, not just the username. So it's a little squirrely in that regard. You have to actually give it the URL. I'm going to change this. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to do this and see if it'll have me save this. I'm going to submit. It will restart the simulation. Are you sure you want to edit? I'm going to, okay. But when I edit that policy, if I were to give it enough time, wait for the simulation, wait till I get some new results, if I go into this user here, which is me, and I go into that policy, I'm going to first look and see if this is finished. Okay, it has done. If I were to go into this policy now, I am going to see, once it is completed and loading, because Liam edited it, now it's doing the simulation. But when this is finished, Liam will not be able to turn the policy on. I will have to turn the policy on, because whoever last edited it cannot turn the policy on. That's a little bit of checks and balances, and that's how it works. So that's a bit of priority cleanup. If you're in a situation where you've got a blanket policy or some sort of retention policy, but you need some items, legal or compliance needs some items to make sure that they're dealt with quickly, to override a hold or even a retention policy or label, this is the solution. And so that is priority cleanup. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you, and thank you for watching.